Travis Victor Alexander was born on July 28, 1977, in Riverside, California, to Gary David Alexander and Pamela Elizabeth Morgan Alexander. He was one of 8 children, having 2 older brothers, Gary and Greg, and 5 younger siblings, Tanisha, Samantha, Hillary, Stephen, and Allie. Alexander's childhood was marked by severe hardship. Both parents were addicted to methamphetamine. The family lived in poverty. In his personal blog titled Raising You, Alexander wrote about his early years. His father was absent, leaving the children to the care of their mother, whose drug addiction progressively worsened. Alexander described being beaten if he or his siblings woke their mother while she was sleeping off drug use. The children had to fend for themselves for basic needs, including food and bathing. Alexander wrote that when his mother slept for days, no food was cooked, and what was available would be eaten or rot, and then what was rotten would be eaten. In his blog, Alexander wrote about a specific memory from age 6. He screamed as loud as he could all day long for his nearby grandmother to get him and take him for the weekend. He screamed so long and loud that he woke up his comatose mother long enough for her to beat him for waking her up. When she went back to bed, he went back to screaming. That evening, his grandmother came and picked him up while his mother slept. Alexander wrote that this was the day he came to the conclusion there was a God. At age 8, Alexander moved in with his paternal grandparents. After his father's death in July 1997, when Alexander was 20 years old, his 7 siblings were also taken in by their paternal grandmother. His brother Stephen Alexander later stated that their grandmother was a saint who clothed and fed them, providing the stability they had lacked. Under his grandmother's care, Alexander became active in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He thrived in this environment. He had friends, a support system, and purpose. Alexander told a friend that prior to joining the church, he would frequently engage in fights. The LDS Church provided structure and direction. Alexander did not attend college, stating it was not for him. As a teenager, he aspired to become a motivational speaker and worked various jobs in telemarketing and retail. He performed stand-up comedy under the alter ego Eddie Snell. Despite his difficult beginning, Alexander became a successful adult. He worked as a motivational speaker and legal insurance salesman for prepaid legal services, later known as Legal Shield. He was described by friends as charismatic, good-looking, and deeply committed to his Mormon faith. At age 30, he lived in Mesa, Arizona, enjoyed financial success, traveled internationally, and maintained an active social life. Jodi Arias was born on July 9, 1980, in Salinas, California, to William Angelo Arias and Sandra D. Allen Arias. She had 4 siblings, 1 older half-sister, 1 younger sister Angela, and 2 younger brothers Carl and Joseph. Accounts of Arias's childhood vary. In interviews, Arias described her childhood as nearly ideal, or almost ideal. Her high school friend Tina Ross stated Arias was a good girl, who didn't seem the slightest bit off. Her mother, Sandy Arias, confirmed that Jodi's upbringing was normal and happy in an interview. Sandy described Jodi's closest playmate as her brother Carl, who was 2 years younger. The family was middle class with traditional values. Jodi's grandparents lived nearby. However, Arias later claimed she experienced abuse starting at age 7. She stated her parents beat her with belts and wooden spoons for disciplinary purposes. When her parents were interviewed by investigators, they indicated Jodi had mental problems and might be bipolar. Her father stated that Jodi had not been honest with her parents since they caught her growing marijuana in Tupperware containers when she was 14 years old. Arias attended Eureka Union High School but dropped out in the 11th grade. She later obtained her GED. Arias was described as intelligent, artistic, and sometimes rebellious. She developed an interest in photography at age 10 and pursued it as a profession. As a young adult, she worked various jobs including as a server. In fall 2001, she took a server position at Ventana Inn and Spa in Carmel, California, where she met Daryl Brewer, the food and beverage manager. They began dating in 2003 and purchased a house together in Palm Desert, California, agreeing to pay $2,800 each per month as mortgage payment. In February 2006, while still working as a server, Arias began working for prepaid legal services. This would lead to her meeting Travis Alexander. In September 2006, Jodi Arias, then 26 years old, and Travis Alexander, 30, met at a prepaid legal RVICES work conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. Alexander was living in Mesa, Arizona. Arias was living in Palm Desert, California. According to witnesses present that evening, the attraction was immediate. Sky Levangier Hughes, a friend of Alexander's who was present, later stated that Arias was beautiful, with long blonde hair, sweet, and friendly. During dinner, Alexander and Arias talked the entire time. The following morning, Alexander told Levangier Hughes he had found his wife, and this was the girl he wanted to marry. Alexander was a devout Mormon. Though Arias was not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, she converted. On November 26, 2006, just 2 months after meeting Alexander, Arias was baptized into the LDS Church. Alexander performed the baptism ceremony at a church in Southern California. Alexander and Arias began officially dating in February 2007. They maintained a long-distance relationship, with Arias living in California and Alexander in Arizona. They traveled together frequently and stayed in contact through daily phone calls and emails. Court records indicate the couple exchanged 82,000 emails during their relationship. By the end of February 2007, Arias relocated from California to Mesa, Arizona, to live closer to Alexander. She worked as a server and cleaned Alexander's home for additional income. The relationship ended on June 29, 2007, after approximately 5 months of dating. According to Alexander's friend, Dave Hall, Alexander stated, "There was nothing about Arias he saw as marriage material or wife material." Friends of Alexander indicated he tried to break off the relationship earlier, but Arias was persistent. The relationship officially ended, but Alexander and Arias continued a sexual relationship. This created internal conflict for Alexander due to his Mormon faith, which valued chastity before marriage. Friends noted Alexander felt guilty about the ongoing sexual relationship with Arias. After the breakup, Arias remained in Arizona for approximately 8 months. During this time, Alexander's friends began observing concerning behavior from Arias. By December 2007, Alexander was dating other women. Friends reported multiple incidents. Alexander's tires were slashed twice. Alexander received threatening emails. Arias followed Alexander on dates with other women. Arias hacked into Alexander's Facebook account. Arias accessed Alexander's bank accounts. Arias entered his home through the doggy door and slept on his couch. None of these alleged incidents were reported to police. Alexander told friends he believed Arias was stalking him. Sky Levangier Hughes recalled telling Alexander she was afraid they would find him chopped up in Arias's freezer. She described Arias as completely obsessed with Alexander from very early on. Despite these concerns, Alexander and Arias continued their sexual relationship and remained in contact. In April 2008, Arias moved from Arizona back to California. She went to live with her grandparents in Eureka, California, in the northern part of the state. Alexander's friends were relieved. Sky Levangier Hughes recalled Alexander saying he was getting his life back, that this was a whole new start, and that Arias was gone. However, unbeknownst to Alexander's friends, Arias and Alexander continued communicating by phone and text messages. They engaged in phone sex and maintained contact. On May 1, 2008, Alexander contacted a travel planner regarding a work trip to Cancun, Mexico, scheduled for June 10, 2008. Alexander had originally planned to take Arias on this trip. He removed Arias's name from the reservation and added Marie Hall, known as Mimi, a woman he was dating. Alexander then contacted Arias and informed her he was no longer taking her to Cancun, telling her he gave his guest spot to pay off a debt to a friend. On May 28, 2008, a burglary occurred at the home of Arias's grandparents in California, where Arias was living. Items stolen included a .25 caliber automatic Colt pistol, $30 in cash, a small stereo, and a DVD player. The gun was never recovered. Prosecutors would later speculate that Arias staged this burglary herself to obtain the weapon. A few days after the burglary, Arias rented a car from Budget Rent-A-Car in Redding, California. She told the rental company she planned to visit a friend in Utah. On June 4, 2008, Jodi Arias drove from California to Mesa, Arizona. According to the prosecution, she arrived unannounced at Travis Alexander's home. According to Arias's later testimony, Alexander invited her. At approximately 1:40 p.m., Arias and Alexander took sexually explicit photographs of each other. These images were timestamped on Alexander's digital camera. At 5:29 p.m., the final photog of Alexander alive was taken. The image showed him in the shower in his bathroom. Immediately after this photograph, accidental images were captured on the camera. One image showed a bleeding person, likely Alexander. Another showed what appeared to be Alexander's body being dragged. The camera had been dropped. Between approximately 5:30 p.m. and 5:33 p.m., Travis Alexander was killed in his bathroom. Alexander sustained the following injuries: 27 stab wounds, a gunshot wound to the right side of his forehead. His throat was slashed from ear to ear. The wounds indicated a prolonged, violent attack. Blood spatter was found extensively on the bathroom walls and floor. There were defensive wounds on Alexander's hands, indicating he fought back. Blood evidence showed Alexander had been dragged down the hallway from the bathroom. The medical examiner later determined the gunshot wound occurred after death, not before, as initially believed by investigators. The sequence of the attack became a point of contention. The evidence indicated Alexander was stabbed repeatedly, his throat was cut, and then he was shot. After killing Alexander, Arias placed his body in the shower. Investigators later found evidence suggesting attempts to clean the scene. Alexander's digital camera was placed in the washing machine, along with bedding and clothing. However, forensic technicians were able to recover the camera and extract the photographs from the memory card. At the crime scene, investigators recovered a .25 caliber shell casing on the bathroom floor, a bloody palm print in the hallway containing a mixture of Alexander's and Arias's DNA, Arias' hair at the scene, and the digital camera containing time-stamped photographs. On June 5, 2008, Arias continued her drive to West Jordan, Utah, where she visited Ryan Burns, a coworker and romantic interest. Burns later told investigators he had been unable to reach Arias by phone on June 4, despite calling 3 or 4 times. When Arias arrived at his home on June 5, Burns noticed Arias had changed her hair color from blonde to brunette. He also observed cuts on her hands. Alexander was scheduled to leave for Cancun on June 10, 2008, with Marie Hall. When Hall had not heard from Alexander for several days, she became concerned. She knew Alexander had a stalker, Jodi Arias. On June 9, 2008, at approximately 10:27 p.m., concerned friends went to Alexander's home at 11428 East Queensboro Avenue in Mesa, Arizona. Alexander's roommate provided a key to his bedroom. Upon entering, friends found pools of blood leading to the bathroom. They discovered Travis Alexander's body in the shower. He had been dead for 5 days. The body was in a state of decomposition. Large amounts of blood were discovered throughout the master bathroom on floors, walls, and the sink. Friends immediately called 911. During the call, they mentioned Alexander's ex-girlfriend Jodi Arias, identifying her as someone who had been stalking him. Mesa Police Department responded to the scene. Officers documented the extensive blood evidence and the position of the body. The scene gave the appearance of an attempt to clean up evidence of the homicide. Investigators found marks indicating the body had been dragged down the hallway into the bathroom. They discovered the digital camera in the washing machine along with articles of clothing and bedding. A bloody fingerprint was found in the hallway near the entrance to the bathroom. Crime scene technicians recovered Alexander's digital camera from the washing machine. Despite being subjected to water, forensic experts were able to extract images from the memory card. These photographs proved crucial to establishing a timeline. The recovered images included sexually explicit photographs of Arias and Alexander time-stamped at approximately 1:40 p.m. on June 4, 2008, photographs of Alexander alive in the shower at 5:29 p.m., and accidental photographs taken at 5:30 p.m. and 5:31 p.m., showing blood and what appeared to be Alexander's body. An image appeared to show Arias dragging Alexander's body. Investigators used the timestamps on these photographs to determine Alexander's exact time of death as between 5:30 p.m. and 5:33 p.m. on June 4, 2008. Forensic analysis identified multiple DNA samples at the scene. A bloody palm print in the hallway contained a mixture of Alexander's and Arias's DNA. Arias's hair was found at the crime scene. Alexander's blood was found throughout the bathroom. This evidence directly contradicted Arias's later claims about her whereabouts. A .25 caliber shell casing was recovered from the bathroom floor near Alexander's body. This matched the caliber of the gun stolen from Arias's grandparents' home on May 28, 2008. The weapon itself was never recovered. On June 19, 2008, police contacted Jodi Arias and questioned her about Alexander's murder. During this initial interview, Arias stated she last saw Travis in April 2008. She admitted they had been seeing each other as boyfriend and girlfriend for over 5 months, but had officially broken up in June 2007 after jealousy issues on both sides. She acknowledged they continued to have a sexual relationship after the breakup, but kept it quiet from people they knew. She stated she last spoke to Travis on June 3, 2008. This statement was contradicted by the photographic evidence placing Arias in Alexander's home on June 4, 2008, the day of his murder. Later that same day, at 10:54 p.m. on June 19, 2008, Arias posted a message to her MySpace page, "Mrs. Travis, see you soon, my friend, but not soon enough." Investigators learned that between June 4, when Alexander died, and June 9, when his body was discovered, Arias repeatedly left messages on Alexander's voicemail. This behavior was interpreted as an attempt to create the appearance that she did not know he was dead. By June 26, 2008, investigators were notified that forensic analysis confirmed the hair and bloody palm print found inside Alexander's home belonged to Jodi Arias. This evidence directly linked her to the crime scene. Arias was interviewed again. This time, she changed her account. She acknowledged being present when Alexander was killed, but claimed 2 masked intruders broke into the home and attacked both of them. According to this version, the intruders killed Alexander but let Arias live. She claimed one of the intruders told her to leave and threatened to kill her family if she ever mentioned the incident to anyone. She stated this was why she had not alerted authorities. Investigators did not find this account credible. There was no evidence of a break-in. The crime scene evidence did not support the presence of additional perpetrators. On July 9, 2008, Jodi Arias' 29th birthday, a grand jury in Maricopa County indicted Arias on 1 count of premeditated first-degree murder, or in the alternative, felony first-degree murder. On July 15, 2008, Mesa police detectives and Siskiyou County Sheriff's deputies arrested Arias at her grandparents' home in Northern California. She was booked in the Siskiyou County Jail on suspicion of first-degree murder. During her arrest interview, Arias maintained she was not involved in Alexander's death. She told a detective, "I don't even hurt spiders." On September 5, 2008, Arias was extradited from California to Arizona. A public defender was assigned to represent her. On September 11, 2008, Arias appeared for arraignment and entered a plea of not guilty to first-degree murder. On September 12, 2008, in a jailhouse interview with the Arizona Republic, Arias denied killing Alexander. She refused to discuss the DNA and photographic evidence that police claimed linked her to the crime. She stated, "God knows I'm innocent. I know I'm innocent. I had nothing to do with his murder. I would never hurt him. He was my friend." On September 24, 2008, Arias was interviewed by the television show Inside Edition. For the first time publicly, she stated she was present when Alexander was killed by 2 intruders. She repeated her account of masked men attacking them. During this interview, she stated, "No jury is going to convict me because I am innocent, and you can mark my words on that." On October 31, 2008, prosecutors filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty for Arias. They alleged as an aggravating factor that the defendant committed the offense in an especially cruel manner. The prosecution contended Arias planned the attack and killed Alexander in a jealous rage. On June 23, 2009, an episode of 48 Hours aired in which Arias provided more details about her home invasion story. She claimed she and Alexander were using his camera before the intruders attacked. This interview would later be used as evidence in her trial, the first time in the history of 48 Hours that an interview was used as evidence in a death penalty trial. In August 2010, Arias changed her story for the third time. She submitted a request to the court to have letters allegedly from Alexander admitted into evidence. The letters were meant to support her new theory of self-defense. In a motion to preclude the letters, prosecutors wrote that the defendant argued the letters were relevant to her claim of self-defense and that she was a victim of previous sexual and physical abuse by Alexander. At this point, Arias claimed Alexander became angry when she dropped his camera, and that she was forced to kill him in self-defense. On February 9, 2012, Judge Sherry Stevens denied a motion by Arias's defense lawyers to remove the death penalty as a punishment option. The defense argued that Arias should not face death because she had not planned to kill Alexander, and that his death was an act of self-defense. In January 2012, Jennifer Wilmot, a death penalty qualified defense attorney, was assigned to represent Arias along with public defender Kirk Nurmi. On December 10, 2012, jury selection for Arias's trial began. The court summoned 375 potential jurors. On December 20, 2012, a panel of 12 jurors and 6 alternates, 7 women and 11 men, were sworn in for Jodi Arias's trial. 18 potential jurors and alternates were chosen in total. On January 2, 2013, opening arguments began in the trial of Jodi Arias at Maricopa County Superior Court in Phoenix, Arizona. The trial was held before Judge Sherry Stevens. Maricopa County Prosecutor Juan Martinez presented the state's case. Martinez described the various stories Arias had told law enforcement before settling on a self-defense motive. He described Alexander's murder as violent and detailed 3 different ways. Alexander could have received a death blow: the gunshot, the stab wound to the heart, and the slashing of his throat from ear to ear. Martinez noted Alexander had defensive wounds on his hands. Martinez described Alexander as a good man who was seduced and then stalked by Arias and killed in a jealous rage when she learned he was dating other women. In wrapping up his opening argument, Martinez played part of a media interview Arias conducted after her arrest, in which she stated, "Mark my words, no jury will convict me." The defense presented their opening statement, describing Arias as a victim of Alexander's abuse, who was forced to defend herself. The trial was aired live to the public and became a media sensation. On January 8, 2013, prosecutors presented jurors with bloody crime scene photographs showing the bathroom where Alexander was killed, his body in the shower, and the extensive blood evidence. Arias appeared shaken when viewing these images. Marie Hall was the first witness to take the stand on January 3, 2013. Hall met Alexander through their Mormon church Thorid. Though they went on one date, there was no romantic spark, and they remained friends. Alexander invited Hall on his work retreat to Cancun, Mexico, and she agreed to go as friends. They were supposed to leave on June 10, 2008. When Hall had not heard from Alexander in several days, she became worried because she knew he had a stalker, Jodi Arias. Hall testified that Alexander told her Arias had slashed his tires several times, sent threatening emails, followed him on dates with other women, broken into his bank accounts, and entered his home through the doggy door to sleep on his couch at night. The prosecution presented the digital photographs recovered from Alexander's camera, including the time-stamped images showing Arias and Alexander together on June 4, 2008, and the Forest Way. Images taken moments after Alexander's death. Forensic experts testified about the DNA evidence, including the bloody palm print containing both Alexander's and Arias's DNA. The prosecution presented evidence regarding the .25 caliber gun stolen from Arias's grandparents' home and the .25 caliber shell casing found at the crime scene. On February 4, 2013, Jodi Arias made the decision to take the witness stand in her own defense. She testified for 18 consecutive days, concluding on March 13, 2013. Arias admitted to the jury that she killed Travis Alexander. She claimed it was self-defense. She testified that Alexander was physically and emotionally abusive during their relationship. She stated Alexander turned violent on the day of his death, forcing her to fight for her life. Arias testified that she had dropped Alexander's camera while taking photographs of him in the shower. She claimed this made him extremely angry and he attacked her. She described fighting for her life and ultimately killing him to survive. Arias also claimed Alexander was sexually abusive and that she had once found him masturbating to a photograph of a child. When questioned about her previous lies, Arias stated, "Lying isn't typically something I just do. The lies I've told in this case can be tied directly back to either protecting Travis's reputation or my involvement in his death, because I was very ashamed." Arias testified she lied about killing Alexander earlier because she planned to commit suicide afterward. The prosecution, led by Juan Martinez, conducted an aggressive cross-examination of Arias that lasted multiple days. On March 14, 2013, psychologist Richard Samuels testified for the defense for nearly 6 days. Samuels stated that Arias suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and amnesia. He explained this was why Arias could not recall much from the day of the killing. Samuels testified that Arias had likely been suffering from acute stress at the time of the murder, sending her body into a fight-or-flight mode to defend herself, which caused her brain to stop retaining memory. Prosecutor Juan Martinez questioned Samuels' evaluation process, arguing that Arias was still lying at the time she was evaluated about having killed Alexander, which would compromise the validity of the assessment. In March and April 2013, psychotherapist Alice Laviolette testified for the defense. Laviolette specialized in domestic violence. She testified that Arias was a victim of domestic abuse, and that most victims do not tell anyone because they feel ashamed and humiliated. Laviolette testified that Arias suffered from battered woman syndrome. During Laviolette's testimony, a debate occurred between her and Martinez over whether Snow White could be considered an abused woman, referencing a previous paper Laviolette had written. Laviolette's testimony sparked public outrage. More than 500 negative reviews of her yet-to-be-released book appeared on Amazon.com. Social media posts attacked her reputation, with some calling it the electronic version of a lynch mob. The prosecution called rebuttal witnesses, including several of Alexander's other girlfriends. These women testified they had never seen Alexander exhibit problems with anger or violence. The prosecution called psychologist Janine DeMarte, who testified that Arias had borderline personality disorder, not PTSD or battered woman syndrome. The defense called rebuttal witness psychologist Robert Geffner, who disputed DeMarte's diagnosis and methodology. The prosecution's final rebuttal witness, forensic neuropsychologist Jill Hayes, disputed defense claims about psychological testing. Through the course of the trial, 3 jurors were dismissed. 1 was dismissed for misconduct. 1 was dismissed for health-related reasons. On April 2, 2013, a 3rd juror was dismissed, reportedly for making statements that showed bias. By this time, the case had become a tabloid and cable television sensation, attracting spectators around the country to the courthouse. On April 16, 2013, after 38 days of testimony, the defense rested. On May 2, 2013, closing arguments began. The arguments concluded on May 3, 2013. Prosecutor Juan Martinez described Arias as a manipulative liar who meticulously planned the savage attack. Martinez again displayed the gruesome crime scene photographs and showed a text message Alexander had sent to friends calling Arias evil. Defense attorney Kirk Nurmi implored jurors to take an impartial view of the case and his client, even if they did not like her. The final 12 jurors were chosen from the remaining panel, and deliberations began. Jurors received the case on the afternoon of Friday, May 3, 2013. They deliberated for 2 full days. On Wednesday, May 8, 2013, late in the morning, the jury reached a verdict after approximately 15 hours of deliberation. On May 8, 2013, at 1:49 p.m., the verdict was read. Jodi Arias was found guilty of first-degree murder. All 12 jurors found Arias guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. 7 of the 12 jurors also found her guilty of felony murder. As the verdict was read, Alexander's family smiled and hugged one another. Crowds outside the courtroom began cheering and chanting. Arias displayed limited emotion, shedding a few tears but remaining largely composed. Following the conviction, Arizona law required the prosecution to convince the jury that the murder was cruel, heinous, or depraved for Arias to be eligible for the death penalty. On May 15, 2013, after deliberating for less than 1 hour, the jury unanimously agreed that the aggravating factor was proven. The murder was committed in an especially cruel manner. The penalty phase began on May 16, 2013. Prosecutors called Alexander's family members to offer victim impact statements in an effort to convince the jury that Arias's crime merited a death sentence. On May 21, 2013, Arias offered an allocution, addressing the jury during the penalty phase. She asked for a sentence of life in prison, as opposed to the death penalty. Arias acknowledged that her plea for life was a reversal of remarks she made to a television reporter shortly after her conviction, in which she said she preferred the death penalty. She stated, I said that, I meant it, but I lacked perspective. Until very recently, I could not imagine standing before you and asking you to give me life. She said she changed her mind to avoid bringing more pain to members of her family, who were in the courtroom. At one point, Arias held up a white t-shirt with the word survivor written across it, telling jurors she would sell the clothing and donate all proceeds to victims of domestic abuse. On May 23, 2013, the jury announced they had failed to reach a unanimous decision. Judge Sherry Stevens declared a mistrial in the penalty phase of the case after jurors were unable to reach a verdict on whether Arias should receive the death penalty or life in prison. Under Arizona law, this meant a new jury would be selected to determine Arias's sentence. On October 21, 2014, Arias's sentencing retrial began. A new jury was selected to revisit the same evidence presented during the first penalty phase. Opening statements were given. This time, the focus was on the psychological makeup of both parties. The defense attempted to portray Arias as a vulnerable woman and Alexander as emotionally and physically abusive. The penalty retrial continued through late 2014 and into early 2015. On March 5, 2015, the second jury also failed to reach a unanimous decision on whether Arias should be sentenced to death. Under Arizona law, when a jury cannot reach a unanimous decision on the death penalty, the option of execution is removed. The sentencing decision then falls to the judge, who must choose between two options: life in prison without the possibility of parole, or life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Maricopa County Attorney Bill Montgomery issued a statement noting that while a jury verdict is the preferred resolution, Arizona law establishes finality for the sentencing phase. He stated the court would now impose punishment. The state's sentencing recommendation would be set forth in pleadings filed with the court and in argument before the court. On April 13, 2015, Judge Sherry Stevens sentenced Jodi Arias to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jodi Arias was transported to the Arizona State Prison Complex to begin serving her sentence. As of 2026, she remains incarcerated. According to accounts from former cellmates Tracy Bro, W.N. and Donovan Bering, in a 2020 Lifetime special titled Jodi Arias, Cellmate Secrets, Arias was described as friendly, quiet, soft-spoken, and well-spoken during her time at Estrella Jail in Phoenix, awaiting trial. She was artistic and enjoyed drawing and singing. Arias even officiated a wedding between Brown and Bering while in jail. However, they also described Arias as calculating and stated she used her sexuality to manipulate male officers. Arias has engaged in various activities while incarcerated, including creating artwork. As of 2024, Arias was selling original artwork via a website managed by her family. On July 6, 2018, Arias's attorneys filed an appeal against her conviction. The appeal claimed that the level of media coverage in the case and misconduct from the prosecution prevented Arias from receiving a fair trial. In 2020, the Arizona Court of Appeals issued its decision. The court acknowledged there had been egregious prosecutorial misconduct during the trial. However, the court ruled the conviction should be upheld because it was based on overwhelming evidence of Arias's guilt. Arias requested that the Arizona Supreme Court review the case. In November 2020, the Arizona Supreme Court declined to hear the appeal. In a 2026 blog post, Arias claimed that detectives working on her case had lost or destroyed evidence. She stated she was preparing a new appeal, arguing that her constitutional rights had been violated during her original trial. In October 2017, Arias alleged in a civil suit that the head of her legal team, Kirk Nurmi, broke attorney-client privilege by disclosing confidential information for the expressed purpose of financial gain and his own public redemption in a tell-all book about the case. The case attracted unprecedented media attention. The Associated Press described the case as a circus and a runaway train. They reported the case grew into a worldwide sensation as thousands followed the trial via a live, unedited web feed. The trial garnered daily coverage from cable news networks and spawned a virtual cottage industry for talk shows. At the courthouse, the case devolved into a circus-like spectacle, attracting dozens of enthusiasts each day, who lined up for a chance to score just a few open public seats in the gallery. The Associated Press noted that for its fans, the Arias trial became a live daytime soap opera. The Toronto Star stated, "With its mix of jealousy, religion, murder, and sex, the Jodi Arias case shows what happens when the justice system becomes entertainment." During the trial, public figures freely expressed opinions. Arizona Governor Jan Brewer told reporters after an unrelated press event that she believed Arias to be guilty. HLN Network issued press releases about their ratings leadership during the trial. On May 21, 2013, HLN ranked number 1 among ad-supported cable networks as Arias took the stand to plead for her life, delivering 2,540,000 total viewers. On June 22, 2013, Lifetime Network premiered Jodi Arias, Dirty Little Secret, a made-for-television movie. The film starred Tanya Raymond as Arias and Jesse Lee Soffer as Alexander. On January 21, 2023, Lifetime released another film titled Bad Behind Bars, Jodi Arias, starring Selena Sinden as Jodi Arias. During trial and incarceration, a Twitter account in Arias's name was operated by Arias's friends on her behalf. On June 22, 2013, from that account, a tweet stated, "Just don't know yet if I will plea or appeal." In late January 2013, artwork drawn by Arias began selling on eBay. The seller was her brother, who claimed the profits went toward covering the family's travel expenses to the trial and better food for Arias while she was in jail. As of 2026, Jodi Arias remains incarcerated at the Arizona State Prison Complex, serving her sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Travis Alexander on June 4, 2008.